Welcome to AI Home Podcast, the first podcast for real estate resources and independent living strategies for the disability community. Why? Because accessibility is home. Hi, I'm Angela Fox, blogger, author, and your host. Now, let's begin. Welcome, everybody, to Accessibility is Home Podcast, a YouTube channel. I have a fabulous guest for the International Bathtub Day in June 15th, Karin Wilson, who will be talking to us about a wet room. But she is so much more than just accessible bathroom. She has all kinds of information that she can share with us today for those who are both wheelchair users, members of the disability community, as well as the housing community. Karin, do you want to say hi to everybody?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is Karin Wilson, and I live in Indiana. And I had cerebral palsy, and I use a power wheelchair. My primary work is running a website called the Ability Toolbox, which has all kinds of information and resources to help people with disabilities solve everyday problems. I also have a travel blog, Freewheelin', and that's where I talk about road tripping across the United States with a disability. And I also cover other topics like home care and home accessibility.
And you've traveled quite a bit.
Yes.
You've lived in multiple locations and you've had multiple accessible housing situations. Is that
Yes,
correct?
I have. Yes, I have. I've lived in 3 homes that were modified to be accessible over the years.
3, that's a lot. Were they all homes or were they apartments?
No, I lived in the main 3 were my father's house and my parents' house when I was growing up. And that house was actually custom built to be accessible. And then I lived, I went to college and I lived in a condo for a little while. It was semi-accessible, but the bathroom wasn't really great. And then I moved from there and I got a house and then I remodeled the bathroom completely. That was the first time that I installed the wet room shower, and it made such a difference in my life that when I moved again, I did the same thing.
Okay, repeating it again. I'm sure you learned a lot of lessons, but it's always
Yes.
a good thing. I think us individuals who are disabilities, we try something and then we try something new again because it's such a trial and error, but it's exciting to hear when something just works the first time that you want to repeat it again. Not that it probably you did learn something between the first and
Exactly.
second time, but I'm always thrilled to hear when people are like, hey, I not only did it once, I did it again because I enjoyed it the first time. I think everybody knows what a bathroom obviously is, and a bathtub and kind of a wheel and shower, whether, you're an able-bodied person or not. But a wet room may be something that our audience is not too familiar or maybe think it's something you use for like your dogs or something. So can you describe what a wet room
Sure.
is?
So a wet room is a space in which the water can go almost anywhere, everywhere within a certain prescribed part of the shower, of the bathroom. So the idea is that instead of building, you still have a shower area, but you don't have to worry about whether the water stays in there or not, because you have drains throughout the main part of the bathroom that will then remove the water. And the advantage of this is that you don't have the problems that you do with roll-in showers. The roll-in shower is inherently a bad design. There's no way to fix it because in order to make the edge of the shower low enough that you can roll into it, it's also low enough that water can easily leak out. And I've seen people use different types of curtains and things like that to try to fix it. But ultimately, leaking is a problem. Whereas if you have a room where the floor is all tile, then you can have drains inside and outside the shower. And then the water will all drain out and you don't have to worry about flooding so much.
So instead of having a bathroom where you have only certain segments of the room where there's just a single drain and you don't want to get water like near the toilet because there's no drain or anything like that, or at least it's not set up to have water around the toilet. And this is one big giant room and you have multiple drains. Is that correct? So you don't have to worry about where the water goes because the entire floor is.
That's correct. In fact,
right?
I routinely shower on the toilet. That's just easier for me. It's one less transfer that I have to do. I just have tile all
Okay.
around the walls, and therefore I can shower on the toilet just as easy as I could shower in the shower. I do also, there is cabinetry in the room, but it's all sufficiently far away from the shower area that it doesn't get wet.
Okay. Okay. And inaccessible for you to still
Oh,
get to
yes.
the
Oh,
cabinet.
yes.
Okay. Okay. So what, just stepping back before we get into even more of the details of a wet room, the pros and cons, I always like to explore the story behind it. What was the moment or the experience that made you, if you feel comfortable, made you feel like, you know what, there's gotta be a better way than a traditional wheel and shower. Would you share that experience?
Sure. So I was just thinking about how it would be so much easier to shower on the toilet. And was there a way I could do that? And I believe I did run into a wet room shower when I was traveling. You are starting to see them in some hotels because hotels have issues with their roll in showers leaking. And so some of them are just putting tile in the room and putting in extra drains. And so having tried that, I was like, oh, yeah, this is much better. This is much easier. And so then that was something that I wanted to have in the future.
When you and I talked earlier, I had reached out to one of our Facebook groups that we're both members of and was asking for people who have accessible bathrooms. And we connected. And then when we talked, I remember you and I discussed about all the great ideas that we get when we're traveling.
Yes.
That hotels really
Mhm.
are a good way of seeing what is
Mhm.
possible and to experience. There's a lot of information. Let's be honest, there's a lot of information out there that you can research, but to actually experience. And then also, I know for myself, cruise lines. The reason why I think that's pretty unique is the fact that small
Correct.
space.
In
It's a
fact,
small
another way
space.
that I learned about wet rooms was from the RV industry. A lot of smaller RVs have a wet room shower. So they actually have a toilet in a shower area. And then typically theirs will have a door to close it all off. But the toilet is in the same space as the shower and it's not an issue. And so I thought, well, why can't I do that?
That's great. Who would have thought of an
Right?
RV? We traditionally don't think RVs as being accessible at all, but they certainly are becoming more and more accessible.
I did have an RV a long time ago, and I found them to be too big for the most part. For the type of traveling that I like to do, it wasn't really
Mhm.
practical because I like to go somewhere. The thing about with a large RV, you have to drive it there, and then you have to find a place to park it. And then how do you get around after that? You don't want to have to keep moving some 30 plus foot vehicle. So what I ultimately decided was that I preferred traveling in a full size van. And so now I have a large
Okay.
ProMaster van, and that is the best for me. I currently have it with a very open layout inside, but that allows me to put in or take out different things that I need when traveling. For example, I can put like a cot in there to sleep on, or I can put a bunch of stuff that I'm hauling from places. I can have multiple people in wheelchairs ride with me if necessary. It's a very flexible kind of space. And for me, that kind of was the best balance between accessibility and maneuverability.
And now a quick break from our sponsor. So as you can see and also hearing me, I am sitting on my back deck and I have my grill. I love being out in my back deck. I hate when I forget something and I have to wheel back into the house, particularly my cell phone. However, I'm excited to announce that another disabled owned business, Cush Pocket, has come up with a solution by creating this fabulous wheelchair bag. I love this bag and have been a proud customer since almost the very beginning. Why do I like it? One, it's huge. Two, it comes in multiple colors. But three, you can put it anywhere on the base of your wheelchair. How does that happen? It's attached to the flap and it has little Velcro. You put it directly underneath your cushion of your wheelchair. And the Velcro and the weight of your body ensures that this fabulous Cush Pocket bag it certainly will not move. I personally have two directly in front of me and it hides behind my legs. And I love that because it's so much more convenient. Trust me, you will never forget anything ever again. So as you can see down below, I have a direct link for Cush Pocket. And if you use my code Angela Fox, you will get $1 off. And not only will you get a fabulous bag, but you'll also support two disabled owned businesses, Cush Pocket and my business, horizontal houses. Check it out. Good thing for all because you experienced your first wet room.
Like that
So
type of travel, or you can tow another vehicle behind it. You could tow, say, a minivan behind it. That is something that might be something that a lot of people would like to do. And I certainly support that. It just didn't work for my specific situation. Also, because I have personal care assistants who generally are driving me, and teaching them to drive an enormous vehicle is always challenging.
now you said that you had the RV experience where you said, "Hey, this kind of is like a wet room. Everything is all encompassing." And you also mentioned just earlier that the aha moment was when you're sitting on toilet. Now, for those who don't want to shower on a toilet, can you have a shower stand?
There's really you can shower the same, you can use it just like you would a roll in shower. You would just put a shower bench in the shower area, and then you just transfer onto it from your wheelchair. In fact, it's still better because you don't have the lip of the roll in shower to deal with to try to get your wheelchair in the right position. Because whenever I use roll in showers, it's always a hassle to deal with the little bump and stuff. It's still annoying, like when I'm traveling. So to not have to deal with that and to not have to ever worry about the flooding, it's still very advantageous. So if you want to still shower in the shower area, having a wet room is great. And also people
Now,
who, if you live with somebody and they're sharing a bathroom with you, they can still use the shower as a regular shower too.
yeah, because a lot of I think what we see this in hotels. We're not talking like yes, there's like the shower benches, which I personally find very
They seem to
unstable.
pick the
They seem to
cheapest,
be
worst one.
wobbly and
Yeah.
everything like that's the first thing. I when I talk to a hotel, I'm like, is it nailed
Yes.
to the wall? Pro tip, everybody, if you're traveling, or even if for your own
Mhm.
wet room, yeah, a bench is portable. You can take it with you, but it's no matter what you get, it's fairly unstable. It really relies on the fact that, in my opinion, I don't know about you, those things are made with the idea that whoever's going to use it can't walk and stand. That's
The
my
wall
opinion.
mounted ones, or the ones that are really long that are usually used to get in a tub, those at least are stable enough to get in and out with. But yeah, if they're just those little benches, those are usually useless. And unfortunately, I have run
They're
into a
awful.
lot of hotels and that's all that they have. And I'm like, use this. So,
Pro tip, I actually in my bathroom, like I thought it would
mhm.
be kind of fun to do the podcast in my own bathroom, and literally am using my backup shower bench to put my
Yes.
mic on. So that's how useful it is for me to put a fine, funny point
Yeah.
to.
And if I wasn't sure what the shower situation would be, I absolutely have brought like a big, like a long, sturdy shower bench with me so that I didn't have to worry about what they might provide.
Oh, yeah, it's good to have
Yeah.
it as a backup.
Yeah.
When you're facing and I travel alone, so when you're facing I've got the one I have, the legs come off. It's not the long one that you're talking about, which I would prefer, but since I travel myself, it doesn't really fit in a
Yep.
suitcase all that well, and it's a little heavier for me, so I've got the really rickety bench and the legs come off. If you're sharing the wet room or you have a bathroom, don't forget that even if you have a wall-mounted bench,
Yeah.
they can't
Exactly.
flip up. That way, they're completely out of the way, and you can get them in all kinds of
Hmm.
colors and shapes. A big thing, if you listen to my channel and my podcast, is I'm always about function and form. You want it functional, but the form needs to be aesthetically
Absolutely.
pleasing because of the resale value.
What I like
Anyway,
about the wet room is because it's all tile, you can use any tile you want. For the floor, you need to consider traction. You need to pick something that's non-slip. That's probably the main disadvantage of a wet room, is that you do end up with a wet floor. If you have someone assisting you, or even possibly for yourself, you may need to dry the floor a bit. You need to make sure that surface is non-slip. But you can choose any tile you want, any non-slip tile for the floor, and anything you want for the walls. You're only limited by your imagination of how you can design that room. You're not stuck with the white medical looking roll and shower that is typically provided in most rentals and most standard homes.
now how does it look with the drain? I know I'm envisioning the wet room having multiple drains. How do you work around that with the tile,
Well,
and
you use
how
small
does it look?
tile on the floor. So the small tile, it's almost like, If you've ever seen small tile before it's installed, it's almost on a mesh background, like a mesh behind it, so that it stays together. Because they don't sit there and stick every one of those little tiny tiles on the wall or the floor individually. They're on like a mesh. So that can curve around gentle slopes like a drain. And then they just grout
Okay.
it
Okay.
once it's on the curve. Yeah, so you
Okay.
do have to
Okay.
use a fairly small tile on the floor. Depending though, if you use linear drains, you might have a bit more flexibility, which I do advise using linear drains. I don't have linear drains, but if I was doing it again, that's what I would change. Because the linear drain is like a long, skinny drain that has like it's a trough basically. It's flat on the top, but the water rolls into it and then it all flows down to the drain. So versus like just a circular drain where you end up with potentially more issues with standing water. The linear drain catches water. And also, if you put the linear drain along the edge of the shower area, kind of where a roll-in shower would end, then if you're showering in the shower, almost all the water will actually drain out properly versus even going past that point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, think, oh my gosh, it's a bigger drain because it's linear. It's literally
Yeah.
across the floor. But traditional bathrooms have segments, and so when you have a linear drain, you can almost segment, so visually at least. This is
Yes.
the shower portion. So
Hmm.
by having that linear drain, which just blends into what we traditionally
Hmm.
think of a
Hmm.
bathroom is, and you're not even realizing it's wet room because visually you see that linear drain and okay, that's a section of the bathroom just like you would a
Correct.
regular
Correct.
bathroom. Now, are there different kinds of linear drains? Is there any particular linear drain you would recommend or the
Can't
same?
say specifically. I think they have different lengths. So I think that's just going to be what fits best into your
Okay.
space. You could also use a combination. So for example, in the main shower area, you'd still probably have your standard drain. And if you're remodeling, you would obviously leave that in place as well. But then along the edge, you would put the linear drain, which will help keep water from coming out of that area.
Okay. Okay. Now, what did you learn from the first time you did the wet room
The
to the
first
second
time
time?
that I did the wet room, my house had a wooden subfloor. Now, when they installed tile and everything, they were supposed to seal it all so that water wouldn't leak through, but the seal at some point failed. And so I started noticing when I was rolling into the bathroom that it just felt a little bit saggy. Like you could almost feel the floor moving under you,
Mm.
which is obviously alarming.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I
Oh,
had somebody
it's
look
like,
at it and they're like, oh, your subfloor is rotting out. And I was like, oh no.
oh
And
no.
the only thing about it that worked out was that I had a long road trip planned. I was going to be gone for 5 weeks. So I arranged for the floor to be replaced during the time I was gone, and they essentially ripped it out. And then instead of putting in tile, they actually put in concrete and they put in stamped concrete floor, which still looks like tile, but it's concrete. And obviously, water's not getting through that at that point. And it was all very well sealed. And so I had it like that for the last couple of years that I lived there.
Okay.
If
Okay.
you're a power chair user, I think a lot of people underestimate how heavy power chairs actually are. When I looked, I
Yeah.
saw the weight of my power chair. I was like, oh, it's 440 pounds or so. And then it has me in it. You
Right.
have to make sure that you do have stable flooring in your bathroom and anywhere in your home.
Yeah, yeah. And having it level, you trigger something for me. When I travel, I use the travel chair. It does not have to torque. Anything that is more than a half an inch high, it does not like to go over. So if your floor, the ground is slightly unlevel, I can be raised up because of the way that the frame and the
Yep.
suspension is. And so one thing that I always struggle with, and you mentioned about the bump, not only is the bump could be an issue for a traditional wheel and shower, but just having it when it's sloped down and then wet, like I would literally have to push myself in my electric wheelchair, push myself away from the bench just to give me some traction, and then I could back up.
You still
Was
have to have
great.
some amount of sloping in order to get the water to drain, but they're
Okay.
not typically steep. You don't
Okay.
need a strong slope for water to drain. And it's smooth. There's not like a bump per se. It just gently slopes towards the drains. It's
Fine.
very, very
Then you
subtle. And
would.
the better
Okay.
design the room is, the more subtle they can make the drains. You can also
Okay.
think about where you're placing them too. You need a few in the room, but you can try to avoid placing them right where, say, your wheelchair is going to be parking so that you are fairly level when you're transferring.
Excellent. And one thing I forgot to ask you kind of just triggered me. As far as contractors, what was your experience in finding a contractor?
Don't think there's that many who do know about wet rooms. And I think if there were more that did, that would make it easier because I think a lot of the mistakes could have been avoided that I encountered. So I would encourage any contractors listening to this, anybody who's certified aging in place specialist or other types of certifications to look into wet rooms and best practices for design so that if you have clients who either want this or that you want to suggest it to, that you know how to do it properly so that it works well for them.
Even suggested,
Yes.
and part of my own consulting firms is helping contractors, real estate agents having
Yes.
meaningful, candid conversations. There's so much place on the individual with the disability to steer the conversation and know what exactly you do or don't know. It's understandable to a certain degree because you want to provide the things that your customer, whether you're a contractor or a real estate agent. But the problem is a lot of people become disabled much later in life. And what does that mean? That means that they suddenly become disabled. And unless you have somebody who is disabled around you, you're not going to be thinking about accessibility and knowing what the resources and knowing about universal design, knowing about a wet room or anything like that. Now you have to change your lifestyle and change your home.
You can learn from other disabled people. But if you're not, because you're new to being disabled, or you live in an area where there's not a lot of disabled people and you don't know how to connect with them online, then these are areas of knowledge that people won't have. And so just being able to have that information readily
Mhm.
available to them so that they can think about the possibilities.
Okay, great. Excellent. So, what about the cost? Is it more expensive, about the same
I
compared
would
to a
say
traditional wheel and shower?
I would say a little bit more. It depends on what you're doing with the drains. If you're adding more drains in the room, there will be a small cost associated with that. But and then you're obviously using more tiling. You're doing more tiling versus putting in a fiberglass shower, but that's not going to be a lot of cost, probably more labor costs. But tile itself, the material is not all that expensive unless you're buying something really fancy and high end. I just used pretty cheap ceramic tiling for the floor and it wasn't that much. If you're having to remodel a bathroom anyway, your cost is going to be fairly low. And if you're constructing new, it's really going to be advantageous, both financially and accessibility wise, to do a wet room.
If you had a wet room, would you still use curtains? Because I'm just thinking about those who are wheelchair users.
So I had someone roll my wheelchair out of the space, just roll it forward. It
Okay.
doesn't even have to leave the room. It just has to go past the kind of water area just towards the other end of the bathroom. I don't use a curtain in my current bathroom. I did use one at my old bathroom in California because it was a bit of a smaller room and I did turn the chair to get it out of the room, but I would close it just to protect the cabinetry that was on the other side. But even there were sometimes I didn't use it and the cabinets didn't get wet. I would say it really depends on your layout, whether you're going to need a curtain. And I do have a curtain in there, but it's along the regular shower boundaries so that if a non-disabled person showers in there, they can pull the curtain.
Yeah. You can actually see my curtain behind
Yeah,
me.
yeah. Because of the way it's designed, you might need a taller shower curtain. You may want to put your shower curtain up higher. And so you just need an extra tall curtain, but that would be the only difference. And possibly a weighted shower curtain. Those are usually better to help keep water in.
Yeah, and the reason why we want to have it tall is those who are not in wheelchairs, you don't want things on the ground or slightly above the ground because it does
Yes,
get
will
wrapped around
happen.
the
Yeah.
wheel.
Now I just keep the curtain like flipped over the rod, like it's totally out of the way.
Now, let me ask you, as far as spacing goes, so wet room the same size, because as wheelchair users, obviously, be able to maneuver around, not
Right.
just to get into the doorway. is crucial.
If you shower on the toilet, you can definitely make a bathroom accessible in a smaller space than you could otherwise. Because then you can roll your wheelchair into the space where the shower might be. That's how my old bathroom in California was. So I would park next to the toilet, and there was maybe about, I would say, about a foot or so between my wheelchair and the shower panel on the wall that had the sprays and stuff. So in that bathroom, which is smaller than my current one, I was still able to make it accessible because it was a wet room. It would have been a lot harder if it wasn't. So if you have a small bathroom, it can be very advantageous to do this. My current bathroom is larger. It's not enormous, and it could be smaller and still work the way that it does. But essentially, I have the toilet, and then there's a space next to it, roughly 2.5, 3 feet, where I park my wheelchair. And then on the other side of that is actually the shower area. But where the shower was, or there was a tub there, we tore that out, and that's where the shower is now.
Yeah. And I always advise people if you want to really know about spacing, if there is a IKEA store near you, I go there for inspiration. I call it the IKEA effect. They are probably the number one brand out there that has really done a phenomenal job of knowing that it's not necessarily the footage, which is important, but it's where
Absolutely.
you put things, like in the order and the angle and the doorways. I've gone and see small bathrooms that are not intentionally designed to be wheelchair accessible. They don't have a wheel and shower. And I go and it's like 200 square feet or something ridiculous. And I go into the setup room and I'm able to get in and spin around in my permeable wheelchair, not a manual wheelchair, just even smaller. So I always call it the IKEA effect. And I love IKEA for that reason.
I love playing around in the IKEA sample kitchens because I think they do a great job.
But yet Home Depot, right before COVID, announced that they were going to have an aging in place accessibility design incorporated into some of the products that they were going to be selling because they were working with American Association for Retired People. So it's really exciting that Home Depot it has started to initiate that. But one thing, is there any particular shower head?
A handheld shower head, because since I'm showering over a distance from the toilet, and I do have a longer than average shower hose, which you can buy those on Amazon. They have all different lengths. I have a really long one for travel that will help you to bridge any extra distances that you might experience. I also have, so because I took the tub out and I wanted to still make the shower nice for other people. So I put in one of the shower panels. So it has like jets on the wall that can spray at you. So if someone wants to shower and have that experience, they can. And those are surprisingly not super expensive
Yeah.
either. I think they're like $300 now on Amazon, inflation, but still not that bad. And that includes all the jets, and it came with the hose and the sprayer and everything.
Yeah. There you go.
I recommend shower panels to everybody that actually displays the temperature of the water. Yes, it has a little light up
Ooh,
panel and it tells you the
fancy.
temperature of the water. And so you can check it, you can look at it, you can see at all times what the temperature is. And that way you can make sure that you don't burn yourself.
And then you know
Yes,
exactly
you can
what
set
temperature
it.
you like that makes you feel good. I
Yeah.
hate to, like,
Yeah.
constantly hit the little nozzle.
In my case, because I do need assistance with showering, this isn't a factor for me, but the controls are not where I could reach them once I was on the toilet or on the shower bench. However, what you can do in that situation is you set the water to the temperature that you know you like it, and then you actually have a little shut off valve on the end of your shower head. So then you can turn the water on and set it, but it won't be running. Then you get onto your shower bench. Then you turn on your water on the hose itself.
Yeah. It's all based on your setup. Now, one thing I do try and encourage real estate agents and those who are in the selling and modifying homes as a business, I think unless you're really knee deep in it, you always have this fear
Mhm.
that the resale value may be lower. And I know you've had multiple homes. Was there any issues when you went from one home to another home?
So my last
No
house
one?
was in California. The market is always hot there. People will buy anything and they'll pay a lot for it. I don't know how that bathroom
Yeah,
affected the resale value. I don't think it really did. But there are people with disabilities out there who are looking for a place to live. And so hopefully you can find somebody who actually needs what you have. There is an advantage to the wet room with this too, which
yeah.
is so the way that my bathroom is set up, you could actually just install like a freestanding tub just right over where all the tiling is and everything. You wouldn't really have to rip anything out. You would just have to attach it to the drain
That's
thing.
really nice. It's a way to kind of
Yeah.
pre-plan having at least one drain where a bathtub could sit is a really good way of kind of planning for the future.
My father's getting older, and luckily, he's somebody who has had to think about this because of me. Last year, he decided to sell the house that I grew up in, the one that was accessible. And I was like, whatever you buy here, I better be able to get in. But when I said that, I wasn't even
Yeah.
just thinking about me. I was thinking about him too. As he gets older, he's got to be able to get in and out too. And he did. He chose a place that's one story. It already had a ramp in the garage because the last person had an elderly relative. So I was like, okay,
Oh,
that's
wonderful.
great. And that's an example actually of accessibility being valuable. To him, that place was appealing because it already had accessibility features. He was someone who needed what that house
Yeah.
had,
And I think,
bought it because of that.
is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience as far as a wet room or just wisdom that you would
I
like to
would just
share?
say that accessibility in your home, it makes such a difference in your life, especially in the bathroom. Just the level of independence and safety that you can have by having an accessible bathroom, it's unparalleled. And the difference between having that and not having it, just especially for someone with a more severe, significant mobility limitations, it's huge. So I would just encourage everybody to consider bathroom remodeling and also be aware of some of the programs that are available to assist you with the cost. There's a couple of programs. If you have Medicaid in many states, they will pay for home modifications. They will do that for a home that you own or a home that is owned by a family member. And vocational rehab will also do that. So if you work or you are wanting to work, then VR will pay for things that enable you to hold a job, which includes home accessibility, and they will remodel your bathroom and kitchen if needed for you. So those are a couple of ways to make it more affordable.
HorizontalHouses.com is the hub for all things related to disability home ownership. You will find my blog, this podcast, my book, and how my consulting services can help real estate agents or housing developers market and tap into the largest minority group, the disability community. Please help me continue this exploration of disability home ownership by connecting through my Facebook page. Remember, sharing our collective experiences will allow us each to lower the kitchen sink but raise the bar for disability home ownership. Thank you.